All right, Psychology 30 students, just taking a look at some of the stuff that's been done so far, and not bad. I think this is a Tuesday night, and I think I'm caught up marking, so please check. I've marked your stuff and handed back some things and made some comments as well. There's also a presentation that I sent out Monday morning about writing, so just some writing hints and stuff like that as well. Just to take a look at the Psychology 1.1 exit slip. I'm seeing that 14 people have done that already, and for the most part, not bad. I see that the presentations seem to be pretty easy to understand. You watched the videos, although they might not have been as helpful to help you understand the topic. And also, I see that the quizzes were pretty easy. They helped you to focus, and although not bad on the autobiography assignment, it certainly scored a little bit lower. So unfortunately, you do have to do some longer assignments somewhere along the line. So Anna really, for the most part, was quite well done. So thank you for doing that, those of you who handed that in. I just want to take a look at the second exit slip here. And that was for Psychology 1.2. Just wait for it to pop up here. Looks like presented material was easy to understand. That's good to know. The difference between domains and perspectives. So we seem to be okay there. And the Wild Boy of Averon seemed to be pretty good in terms of the understanding and enjoying that article and the video and so on. Assignment B, you understood that. Assignment C maybe a little bit less. So assignment C, I believe, was the assignment where you were looking at the Wild Boy of Averon. Okay, I just thought I would pull it up here. So you were working on his group collaborations. The idea here is that you have editing rights to this document. So everybody can put their comment on here, and then I'll make some comments back on it. So the issue was, or what issue does the article you read on the Wild Boy of Averon raise on the relative influence of nature and nurture? So most of you get the nurture part, the fact that he was raised in an environment in which there was no human contact that affected his development. One thing that people miss, though, is to what extent does biology play a role there? So think of his genetic makeup. Now, I always said, and I've been saying that maybe the genetic makeup actually hurt him because he wasn't able to acquire language skills, because maybe he was just born without the ability to acquire language skills. However, maybe his genetic makeup actually helped him survive when other people might have died in that type of environment prior to him being discovered by humans. So I want you to discuss that a little bit as well. I noticed if there were any questions on 1.2, and somebody did ask, have there been similar cases in recent history to the Wild Boy of Averon, and were there any professional analysis on the Wild Boy's condition at the time? And I would say yes, but you have to remember that that was in the late 1800s, and so the professional analysis was also late 1800s, so it might not seem like it might have been very professional in terms of what we're maybe used to today, but it was definitely seemed to be, from reading about it, it seemed like there seemed to be a fair amount of interest. And you have to remember too, this is when this whole study of psychology really started taking off as well. So this was kind of an interesting case. And I do remember that people were really fascinated by this kind of case, and there were a whole bunch of stories about people being raised like Tarzan and so on. The problem is, and there are modern day examples, however, a lot of them are hoaxes, so you do have to do your research carefully. I found one site, though, you might want to take a look at, and I found some others that were maybe a little bit sketchy and maybe a little bit hoaxy, but this is from the BBC, so I'm thinking it's probably not a bad site. So there's a couple of things that if you want to look it up. The name would be feral children, so you can look up feral children. And feral just means that they're actually raised in the wild. So if you have feral cats, then they're wild cats. If you have feral dogs, they're wild dogs, and so on. So you can look that up. But there's a couple of cases here. Oksana in the Ukraine in 1991. Shamdeo in India in 1972. And again, you can read about these if you want. It's just look up feral children or modern day examples of feral children, And you should see the site www.bbc.com, and maybe I'll share that with you underneath the link on YouTube for this video as well. Okay, so that was 1.2, and just taking a look quickly at 1.3, although a lot of people haven't got there yet. But there is one thing that's come up here that I do want to caution you about. Okay, so one thing that comes up here is 4 steps of research seems to be okay. I understand the difference between types of research, strongly agree. And then I see a very high, high degree of, I guess, people's understanding of validity and reliability. However, when I see the assignment that's related to this, I don't really see that as being the case. So remember, validity, we're not talking about validity and reliability in terms of whether or not people should do it because it's reliable in terms of the research methods. Remember that validity and reliability, if you haven't got there yet, you'll see my presentation. But validity is the ability of a research method to be able to measure what it's designed to measure. All right, so if I design a study, let's say to understand the effects of a certain drug on an athlete's performance, but really I'm wanting to know, and I report on how many athletes are using performance-enhancing drugs, then I'm not really measuring what I was supposed to measure, so the research isn't really valid. Reliability when it comes to research means, will I get similar results if I repeat the experiment? So if I do an experiment and I do it a year from now, will I get the same results? If I don't, then it's not very reliable. Now, if you go back to my survey that I did at the beginning of the course, if I repeated that survey with another sample, I would not get the same results. The reason for that is because the people that answered that survey were basically people that knew me directly or knew people that knew me directly. So it was very closely related to people in my sphere of influence and my social circles. And that's going to be different if I go somewhere else. If I go into some other community and some other, let's say, different ethnic communities, they might not understand Connor McDavid from Pierre or from Justin Trudeau, right? So it depends. I wouldn't get the same results if I put that survey out again. So that wasn't a very reliable set of data. Validity. What was I really measuring with that survey? And there were different questions about different things. There was a question about alternative rock. There was a question about the best hockey player in the NHL or the best young talent. There's a question about who would win a Super Bowl. And by the way, most people or more people picked New England, and that didn't happen. So that was kind of interesting, but not really valid because I wasn't really measuring any one thing specifically. Okay, so that would be the difference between validity and reliability. So before you actually answer this, you might want to make sure, do I really understand validity and reliability? And if there's some questions there, go back. Ethical research, there seems to, or ethical issues in research, that seem to be, so far anyways, a little bit stronger. Now, Simon D is watching that movie Awakenings. Now, it may take you a while to get a hold of that movie, but probably not, because it's fairly common. It's out there in places. It stars Robin Williams and Robert De Niro, and I think it's from 1990. Make sure that you take your time and actually do that assignment quite well. There's more in there than what you think. I know there's only 3 questions, but they're not meant to be just sort of knock-off questions that you do in 5 minutes and get the assignment over with. They are meant to make you think and dig a little bit deeper into what the research methods were that were used in that movie and whether or not there were some ethical breaches in that movie as well. And I think that's about it for the exit slips so far. I may revisit this later on once I have a little bit more, but so far this is what's coming in terms of feedback on my presentations. I'll open up a little bit more into Unit 2 on the unit on prenatal development, and we will go from there.